Hello, this is one of the very latest COBI 1/28th scale tanks. It's a Panzer VI Tiger. Comes with 1,275 pieces, costs about $100 US. And I specifically got this one because I just wanted to see what is the state of the art in 1/28th scale from COBI. This comes with a small plaque coming with the specific preserved and restored tank that this represents, and a portion of the profits from the sale of this set go towards, again, restoring and preserving history. They also give you a couple of surely inert spare shells. The build of this is impressive. Every single time I get a new COBI set, I find more pieces that I've never seen before. Specific designs of pieces, and in this case also colors that I don't think I had seen before. This color right here is not just a regular tan, it's not an olive green, it's a very specific color that tries to match some of the paints used in World War II. Same goes for the darker tone there. This is like a mustard yellow color, mustard seed yellow color. This is a darker version, closer to like a Dijon color. There's actual Panzer gray that's used on some of the inner bits. An interesting medium brown is used here, as is standard these days. They have no stickers whatsoever, so anything that is a decorated piece is done with prints. And if they have prints that need to go across multiple parts, they assemble the parts at the factory first before doing that print. So everything is perfectly aligned, no matter how small or large. The tracks are plastic. They are super, super loose individually. The individual tread links one from another. And yet, even on a very, very slick, hard surface, this is able to roll on its own without using any cheater pieces, any rubber road wheels that you're not seeing underneath or anything. So it actually functions well. The turret is able to rotate around. It's not really attached. I'll show you more about that. You can bring your turret up and down as well, or your main barrel up and down. And then you've got the point defense, little machine gun barrel that sticks out here. It's only able to go up and down a bit. The hatches can be opened and closed. You can put a figure in there, but this set does not come with any figures, something that I'm not sad about at all because, well, this is very selfish of me, but I just get tired of explaining every single time to folks who haven't heard me explain it before that, yes, everybody knows COBI figures are not the best. And if you're looking for the leading brands figures and those are the only types of figures that you like in brick built stuff, well, this company doesn't have them and they're not allowed to have them legally, and just ignore the figures. So now we can just ignore the figures. They're not even here. Level of detail here is fantastic. The build was very, very, very intense. Definitely you have a lot of pieces open and on the table at one time. No matter how well you sort it out, you're going to have a lot of parts in some of your miscellaneous and specialized piece bins. Even just as I was building this live on Twitch, I did some demonstrations of, okay, I'm going to look for a 1x2 tile now. Oh, wait, that's not it. That's an inverted tile. Wait, that's not it. That's a 1x1.5 tile. Wait, that's not it. So many different, very slight variations on common classes of parts. I really like this piece right here. It's a 1x1 round tile with a bar coming out to the side. We've got that in both of these camo colors here. They use the 1/300th scale old ship air intake piece here to create a little curve in the, just a slight curve in the piping right here. A 90-degree piping piece right here. Yeah, just I really, really enjoyed just encountering all the different pieces along the way. And ultimately, most of the assemblies went together without too much difficulty. The biggest problem for me was just paying attention. I really needed to pay attention with this more than I think I have with just about any other set to date, simply because of the large number of pieces, and also because many things on this with the camo pattern are not symmetrical. So they'll have you working on both sides simultaneously to reduce the number of steps, but then the two sides, their subassemblies, will not be the same because the pattern is not the same between the two. Of course, they've got everything from 1x1, 1x2, 1x3, 1x4, all the way up with no stops in between, 1x5, 2x9. You can't rely on just overall shape. You do need to do some counting of studs, but overall the end result here is something that doesn't have many studs showing. It does show some, but it's closer to plastic model level of fit and finish, I think, than just about anything that I've ever built with bricks. That's just a regular set that you can just go buy. You open it up, follow the instructions, and finish it. One of the more satisfying steps was attaching these flanges on the sides of the hull. It's an early step in the build process. As you start from the core, you basically start from the plane of the road wheel axles and then start to work your way up. And very early on, you add some parts in that you add these little flanges to much later on. And the payoff there just feels really feels great. I think that I got the build right. I don't think I made any mistakes. I made plenty of mistakes along the way, but I believe I corrected them. There are two types of road wheel pieces here. The concave ones, and then there's also a flat one on the other side. So you've got as much as they could fit into the space of the actual wheels that are there, these large diameter wheels that were used on the Tiger. And underneath the hull, you can see the flat ones on the inside there, and just how many pieces are used even for this base layer. You can see a lot of half plate thickness parts, which are generally going to be studs on both sides. Some of them are just inverted plates, but this is all to get the spacing very specific for where those road wheel axles are going to be, to try to get the proportions just right. Now, I mentioned the turret isn't really attached. That's because it's just sitting here. Now, it does rotate perfectly fine, and it is properly centered and located, but as soon as you pull it up, you see that there's nothing actually connecting it down below, and it's just sitting in this very satisfying little geometric, not quite circular space. This is something that I personally had never seen before and had never encountered before. I've never built something that has this detail in it. I liked the periscope right there. It's again peculiar. The angles that are used, like here for this joint, angles that I had never encountered before. Just it all works, but it very much requires parts that pretty much only COBI has, or that very few companies have, to be able to pull off this kind of geometry just using normal pieces, not using anything truly specialized. As far as COBI goes, this is considered normal stuff. I did knock that off just a little bit. It's not too fragile though for what it is. Once it goes together, you do have to put these on just one at a time, but once it's together, that's pretty nice. And then you can just pull all of this out. You can just set this down. Again, it's not that fragile. And then you can see some extra interior detail. This has some shells up along the sides where the racks would be. It's not the full complement of them, but it definitely gives you the idea. And I did try to look into some of the interior details of this exact tank. I watched some video footage and looked at pictures and things and realized very quickly that these machines are far more complex than I ever imagined. So I'm not even going to pretend to know what stuff is. I'm just going to show it to you. And those of you who are knowledgeable about this specific machine hopefully can get enough visual information here about what is present and what isn't, such as the entire radio and driver's compartments. Their seated positions just aren't there whatsoever. These hatches do open up just enough to put a figure standing in there, but there's no actual detail of those stations in there, unfortunately. There is, however, an engine compartment that can be accessed from the outside. I'm going to need to remove these two small sub-assemblies. I did have trouble getting those to line up. That upper one was a pain. It kind of needs a very specific distance, and I wasn't able to achieve that quite to the level of satisfaction that I would have preferred. Sorry about that. Let me get this popped open. There we go. And there's the engine, which does have printing on it, and that is the parts there are silver. You can also pull more of the deck, the upper deck, off, and then remove the engine entirely. There's the first layer off, and you can see there's an unnecessary level of detail that's normally completely hidden away. I believe that these are the fuel cells. This was a really interesting assembly that was new to me. You can see an example here of this 1x2 in gray, the light gray, the 1x2 tile. This reddish orange piece over here is the exact same thing, but with a tiny little bit of stud added into it. So the black is its own separate piece, just like a stud sliced off that you insert yourself. Very interesting. And then here's the engine. Actually, a couple pieces of it stayed down in there, but I'm all right with that. An additional print right here. Again, another thing that you wouldn't see if you didn't take this apart, and another exclusive print here as well. It doesn't have full detail, but I mean, for something that's never seen until you really, really dig into this, that's impressive. Again, I'll restate, there are some areas where alignment is tricky, where you're going to need to probably massage parts around a little bit to get them to fit properly. Like this wants to spring up. I think it's supposed to be farther down, which means that this part here needs to be farther back. Make sure that that's pushed in all the way. Make sure that I'm getting that bar to insert properly, just so that everything aligns right. Similarly, on the exhaust headers, on the engine itself, the collectors, I think, have a slight angle that I wasn't expecting, just wasn't able to quite go in perfectly right. And also the lateral spacing on this set of spacers here was a little bit tricky to get right. And in the end, it turned out that I didn't need to get it just right, but while I was building it, felt like it needed to be properly centered, and one of the inner ones wasn't lining up quite properly. It was able to slip out of the sleeve that it's in. So you do encounter some of those things with some of these very, 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 very carefully, very, very specifically located parts and assemblies that do require a little bit of additional care. I'd say more of the advanced modeler's touch than usual. And that brings me to, I think, the main theme that I want to close this out on. This is more of a modeler's kit than a brick-based set assembler's kit. This is something where if you don't have time and space and hazmat considerations to be doing proper plastic models that require glue and paint and potentially weeks or even months of work, but you do want something that's very, very nice on display, and you really care about these historical machines. As a matter of fact, even if you don't care that much about the specifics, you're not a master on the individual machines, either way, there's a range in there. This gives you something that you can simply buy, build per the instructions, and then just be done with, and then just put it on display and enjoy it forever. This really doesn't feel like a typical brick-based set to me. It's a cut above, if not a couple cuts above. It does have some relatively specialized parts, a little dimple piece here. A lot of these piping pieces are pretty generic, but like the muzzle brake here, that's a very specific piece for the Tiger I that they made, or at least for certain classes of heavy tanks from World War II in particular. So a very specific piece is used there. And along the way, the build, getting all the angles just right, does require some compromises in ease of assembly, I think. But the end result is something that is so much easier to put together than even a snap build regular model kit, but it does approach that level of proper visual impact, I think. Obviously, this does have shiny plastic, so if you want it to look much more realistic, you're going to want to give something like this a top coat if you're going to be keeping it long term. You want to give it a top coat of matte. It's just ABS. You can just use an acrylic spray can of matte clear. Take the turret off, and you're pretty much good to go. It's not going to affect, as long as you put it on nice and light, you're careful with it, you know what you're doing. You can get this to look much more realistic. And it has so few studs, again, that are visible. I think the ones that are most noticeable are just right here, a couple of hollow studs on those wedge plates. Otherwise, the rest of it can be completely forgiven and just seen as surface texture and, dimples in the steel and other features. I mean, they even got this little port right here, this tiny little one. As a print, they didn't even need to do that. You can even angle the smoke grenade launchers or canisters more realistically, have them kind of feathered as they go down if you want. So this is a serious model. And thus, the $100 price doesn't feel that bad to me. I've personally been concerned about the increases in prices of COBI sets over the years. When I built my first Tiger, it didn't cost no $100. So why does this one cost $100? Oh, because of all the things that I've covered here and so much more that went into it. It feels worth it as something that's as serious as it is. This is a toy for adults. It is not a toy for kids. It's not a toy to be played with. It's a toy to be enjoyed when it's put together, moved about a little bit, but mostly looked at and enjoyed as a piece of pride to have on display, and a a very respectful piece of attempt at replicating a piece of history. This specifically represents the very first Tiger I that was captured in World War II. It was captured by Britain in, I think it was 1943, if I recall correctly. This exact one still exists at the Tiger, at the Tank Museum. It's the only one that's still running in the world as well. And the amount of passion that goes into preserving these things, obviously this is very much a bad guy machine, but there's a whole lot of engineering that went into it. There's a whole lot of history behind, all sides of conflicts. When you look at the material that's used in them, that is worth preserving and worth showing care towards. And COBI has done I think the best that they reasonably can, if not better. No, they've definitely done better than I think they reasonably could for the scale of this thing, and they deserve to be proud of it. So I'm very impressed. This is beyond my pay grade, honestly, and I hope that you've enjoyed this look at it. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.